Welcome back to our channel for another deep dive into the captivating high stakes drama unfolding within the walls of Beyond the Gates. Today is a beautiful day to unpack the explosive secrets, undeniable tension, and shocking confrontations that are keeping us all on the absolute edge of our seats. Let us get right into the heart of the matter and explore the intricate web of deceit, passion, and betrayal that currently plagues our favorite characters. The sterile, brightly lit corridors of the hospital have always been a breeding ground for intense emotional warfare, but the current mess entangling Bill, Haley, Danny, and Andre has reached an unprecedented level of severity. The atmosphere is incredibly thick with unresolved grievances, bitter resentments, and lingering romantic attachments that simply refuse to be severed. At the absolute epicenter of this sprawling, chaotic web is Bill, a man who has miraculously managed to cheat death yet again. His recent health crisis was nothing short of catastrophic, a terrifying medical ordeal that brought everyone in his immediate orbit to their absolute breaking point. Against all conceivable medical odds and the grim predictions of his doctors, Bill somehow survived this latest emergency, pulling through when the monitors suggested all hope was completely lost. However, his physical survival has only served to ignite a massive emotional powder keg that threatens to destroy multiple relationships. The immediate aftermath of Bill's miraculous stabilization was marked by a moment of sheer, unfiltered panic that revealed far more than anyone ever intended. In the chaotic, terrifying frenzy of the medical emergency, as doctors and nurses frantically scrambled to save his life, Danny suffered a massive lapse in judgment, or perhaps a highly revealing slip of her deeply buried subconscious. Overwhelmed by the terrifying prospect of losing him forever, Danny loudly and desperately referred to Bill as her husband, completely omitting the crucial X prefix that defines their current legal status. This single, highly publicized word echoed loudly through the hospital corridors, instantly shattering the comforting illusion that she had entirely moved on from their traumatic past. To make matters infinitely more complicated and painful for everyone involved, the very first thing Bill did upon regaining his faculties and stabilizing from the emergency was to explicitly request to see Danny, completely bypassing his current wife, Haley. This blatant disregard for boundaries and the undeniable, lingering emotional tether between the former spouses proved to be the absolute breaking point for Andre. Andre has spent an agonizing amount of time trying to be the supportive, understanding, and patient partner, but his goodwill has completely evaporated into thin air. He is thoroughly exhausted and deeply resentful of the fact that Bill continues to hover over their lives like an inescapable, suffocating dark cloud. The realization that Bill summoned Danny immediately after his brush with death, coupled directly with Danny's shocking husband declaration, pushed Andre entirely over the edge of reason. Determined to reclaim his relationship and establish firm, unbreakable boundaries once and for all, Andre made the fateful decision to march directly into Bill's hospital room for a confrontation that was destined to be incredibly tense, volatile, and potentially destructive. When Andre finally stepped into the sterile, quiet confines of the recovery room, the animosity between the two men was instantly palpable, hanging heavily in the air like a thick, suffocating fog. Andre did not mince his words, nor did he offer any polite, customary pleasantries regarding Bill's miraculous recovery. He went straight for the emotional jugular. He firmly and aggressively warned Bill to stay far away from Danny, demanding with absolute authority that he respect the boundaries of her new life and their ongoing relationship. Andre made it abundantly clear that Bill needed to stop clinging desperately to the past and instead rely entirely on the support of his actual wife, Haley, who should be his primary focus. Andre's voice dripped with palpable disdain as he articulated exactly how completely fed up he was with Bill's constant, lingering presence in their daily existence. painting a vivid picture of a man who is desperately trying to protect his romantic territory from an unrelenting, arrogant intruder. However, if Andre expected Bill to cower in fear, express remorse, or offer a sincere apology in his severely weakened physical state, he was deeply and fundamentally mistaken. Despite being confined to a hospital bed, hooked up to various monitoring machines, and recovering from a near death medical experience, Bill exuded an infuriating, almost toxic level of confidence. This arrogance was not born of mere delusion, but rather of a deeply guarded, explosive secret that only he and Danny currently share. Unbeknownst to Andre, Bill is tightly holding on to the ultimate trump card, the vivid memory of a passionate, forbidden one-night stand he shared with Danny in the claustrophobic confines of a stalled elevator during the terrifying night of the recent tornado. This hidden infidelity fuels Bill's smug, unwavering demeanor, providing him with a twisted sense of superiority and an unbreakable, albeit highly toxic, secret connection to his former wife. Armed with the dangerous secret knowledge of their elevator rendezvous, Bill looked Andre dead in the eye and delivered a chillingly confident, unwavering proclamation. He arrogantly assured Andre that no matter what aggressive tactics he employed, and no matter how hard he tried to completely erase the past, he would never be able to stop Danny from caring deeply about him. Bill confidently and smugly stated that Danny would never truly forget him, essentially telling Andre to his face that he was fighting a pathetic, losing battle for her heart and soul. This blatant disrespect and unwavering self-assurance absolutely infuriated Andre to his very core. He found Bill's smugness incredibly hypocritical and utterly ridiculous, especially considering the undeniable fact that Bill had previously destroyed his marriage to Danny by engaging in a devastating, heartless extramarital affair with Haley. The sheer unadulterated audacity of a man who had so callously cheated on his wife, now acting as though he held an eternal, unbreakable claim over her, was simply too much for Andre's fragile patience to bear. As the argument rapidly escalated into a fiery, unpredictable exchange of vicious insults, Andre made the conscious decision to hit Bill where it hurt the absolute most. Just before turning on his heel to leave the hospital room, Andre deliberately and maliciously mocked Bill's advancing age, throwing a sharp verbal dagger aimed directly at the older man's deepest insecurities and his current undeniable physical frailty. This calculated, cruel insult hit its intended mark perfectly, instantly enraging Bill beyond measure. The sudden massive spike in Bill's anger and stress levels caused an immediate and terrifying physiological reaction. The steady, rhythmic hum of his heart monitor suddenly transformed into a frantic, high-pitched beeping, signaling a dangerous, potentially fatal spike in his heart rate. The piercing, urgent sound of the medical alarms echoing down the quiet hospital hallway immediately drew the frantic attention of the dedicated medical staff. Nurse Ashley came sprinting frantically into the room, her eyes wide with genuine alarm as she quickly assessed the rapidly deteriorating medical situation. Recognizing instantly that Andre's aggressive, hostile presence was the direct, undeniable catalyst for Bill's sudden and severe medical distress, Ashley did not hesitate for a single second to take absolute, uncompromising control of the environment. With fierce professional authority and zero tolerance for the petty, dramatic confrontation, she immediately and forcefully ordered Andre out of the room, physically inserting her own body between the two feuding men to ensure her vulnerable patient's safety. The sheer, terrifying chaos of the moment highlighted exactly just how incredibly dangerous this emotional love triangle had become, dangerously blurring the fragile lines between matters of the heart and matters of life and death. Once Bill was properly stabilized and the immediate, terrifying medical threat had finally passed, Ashley stepped out into the brightly lit hallway to directly confront Andre about his atrocious behavior. She delivered a scathing, incredibly harsh reprimand, fiercely criticizing his extreme carelessness, his shocking lack of basic human decency, and his sheer stupidity. She sternly reminded him that regardless of their complicated personal history or their ongoing bitter feud, intentionally provoking a man who had literally just survived a massive, life-threatening health emergency was not only reckless, but potentially fatal. Andre, suddenly struck by the heavy realization of the immense gravity of his actions and the terrible potential consequences of his unchecked, blinding anger, offered a quiet, deeply humbled apology to the furious nurse. However, before the tense conversation could continue any further, his phone buzzed violently with a new, unexpected text message. The contents of the message, though entirely unknown to the onlookers, clearly darkened his already foul mood even further, prompting him to abruptly turn around and walk away from the hospital entirely. Seeking desperate refuge from the overwhelming, suffocating pressure of his rapidly crumbling romantic relationship and the heavy guilt of the hospital room confrontation, Andre retreated to the dim, solitary, and quiet comfort of the local pub. Surrounded by the ambient, meaningless noise of clinking glasses and muted, distant conversations, he sank heavily into a dark corner booth and began to actively drown his profound, aching sorrows in a steady stream of alcohol. With every single burning sip of his drink, the crushing weight of his deep-seated insecurities pressed down heavier and heavier upon his weary shoulders. He was a man deeply, truly in love, yet he was entirely consumed by the terrifying, paralyzing realization that he might be actively losing the very woman he cherished to a manipulative ghost from her deeply troubled past. The alcohol offered absolutely no real, tangible solutions to his problems. It only provided a temporary, dangerously numbing escape from the painful, unavoidable reality that Bill's looming shadow was proving completely impossible to outrun. Meanwhile, back at the bustling hospital, the dramatic, far-reaching ripple effects of the explosive confrontation were just beginning to rapidly spread. Danny soon crossed paths with a still fuming Ashley, who thoroughly and bluntly briefed her on the explosive, dangerous encounter that had just transpired between her current partner and her former husband. Upon hearing the shocking details of the vicious argument, Danny was immediately struck by a massive, paralyzing wave of sheer, unadulterated panic. Without a second thought for her own schedule, she completely abandoned whatever she was doing and frantically rushed back down the hallway to Bill's recovery room. She aggressively and breathlessly questioned Bill, demanding to know exactly what specific words were exchanged between him and Andre during their fight. However, her highly frantic, desperate demeanor raised a deeply troubling, unavoidable question for anyone keenly observing the situation. Was she rushing to his bedside out of a genuine, lingering concern for his fragile, recovering health? Or was she absolutely, completely terrified that Bill had finally spilled the devastating, relationship-ending secret of their elevator hookup to Andre? Danny's highly frantic behavior and her desperate, transparent need to control the surrounding narrative did not go unnoticed by those closest to her. She soon found herself tightly cornered and forced to awkwardly explain her questionable actions to a highly skeptical, deeply concerned audience consisting of her family members, Anita, Vernon, and Nicole. This sudden, unexpected family intervention placed Danny in an incredibly awkward, highly defensive, and vulnerable position. For a very long time, her family had been her absolute biggest supporters through all her trials. They had finally reached a peaceful point where they genuinely, truly accepted that Danny had successfully moved past the immense trauma of her failed, toxic marriage to Bill. They had warmly and enthusiastically welcomed Andre into the family fold, openly celebrating his calming presence in her life as a beautiful symbol of healing, growth, and new beginnings. But the chaotic, revealing events of the past 24 hours had completely and utterly shattered that comforting, hopeful illusion. The family's primary source of deep confusion and heavy, palpable judgment stemmed directly from the highly publicized emergency room incident. They had all clearly heard or been reliably informed of the shocking, undeniable moment when Danny desperately and loudly screamed out for her husband while Bill was actively fighting for his life on the stretcher. This was absolutely not a minor, easily dismissible slip of the tongue in their critical eyes. It was a massive, waving red flag that directly contradicted everything she had been confidently telling them about her unwavering commitment to Andre. Consequently, Danny was forcefully subjected to face a relentless barrage of intense, uncomfortable questions and heavy, unwavering judgment from Anita, Vernon, and Nicole. They fiercely demanded to know exactly why, after absolutely everything terrible that Bill had put her through with his affair with Haley, her very first primal instinct was to loudly claim him as her spouse in front of the entire hospital staff. The family interrogation was absolutely relentless, leaving a cornered Danny desperately struggling to find a plausible excuse that wouldn't accidentally expose her darkest, most destructive sins. What truly makes this intense family interrogation so incredibly tense and dangerous is the massive, ticking time bomb hidden just beneath the fragile surface of Danny's lies. For Danny's own sake, she has to pray with absolutely every single fiber of her being that Anita, Vernon, and Nicole have not yet discovered the absolute unvarnished truth about what actually happened on the chaotic night of the devastating tornado. The deeply buried secret of her intimate, highly passionate, and entirely forbidden encounter with Bill in the stalled elevator is the one single thing that could completely and permanently obliterate her current, carefully constructed life. If her family were to ever uncover this massive betrayal, their collective disappointment and anger would be absolutely immeasurable. More importantly, and far more terrifyingly, if Danny ultimately fails to keep this explosive, toxic secret hidden from Andre, there is absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind that their romantic relationship will come to a swift, brutal, an entirely unforgiving end. The emotional stakes have truly never been higher for her. Backed entirely into a metaphorical corner by the very people who know and love her best, Danny was ultimately faced with the most difficult, profound, and life-altering question of all. Anita, Vernon, and Nicole looked her squarely and intensely in the eyes and asked her point blank and without any hesitation if she genuinely, truly, and completely loves Andre. They issued a stern, heartbreaking, and incredibly serious warning alongside their heavy question. If her answer is anything less than an absolute, unwavering yes, if she is simply using Andre as a convenient emotional placeholder while her conflicted heart remains secretly tied to Bill, then she is committing a terrible, unforgivable cruelty. They firmly reminded her that by selfishly stringing Andre along while secretly harboring deep feelings and massive, destructive secrets involving her ex-husband, she is actively and deeply breaking the pure heart of a genuinely good man. The heavy, suffocating silence that immediately followed their ultimate question hung incredibly heavy in the tense air, leaving the fragile future of absolutely everyone involved hanging in a perilous, terrifyingly uncertain balance.